Elementary Science Class 8. Microorganisms, Friend and Foe. Microorganisms. Did you know that there are living organisms around us that we can't normally see?
Really? What are they called?
They're called microorganisms or microbes. For example, have you noticed how moist bread can get spoiled and develop grayish-white patches?
Yes, I've seen that before. What are those patches?
Those are tiny, black rounded structures. Microorganisms are responsible for that.
Wow, I had no idea. Where else can we find these microorganisms?
Microorganisms can be found in all types of environments, from ice-cold climates to hot springs, and even inside the bodies of animals and humans.
That's amazing. Can we see them up close?
Absolutely. Let's try an activity. We can collect some moist soil and water, then observe it under a microscope. You might see tiny organisms moving around. Microorganisms and Us. Microorganisms can be both beneficial and harmful. Some of them are used in the preparation of foods like curd, bread, and cake.
Wow, really? I didn't realize microorganisms were used in making those things.
Yes, and they're also used to clean up the environment by breaking down organic waste into harmless and usable substances.
That's amazing. I didn't know microorganisms could be so helpful.
They're also used in the production of medicines, such as antibiotics like penicillin, streptomycin, and erythromycin.
Antibiotics. I've heard of those, but I didn't know they came from microorganisms.
Yes, and they're even used to control plant diseases and prevent microbial infections in livestock and poultry.
Wow, microorganisms really are everywhere, aren't they? I had no idea they were so important.
Absolutely. Microorganisms play a crucial role in our lives, and it's important to understand both their beneficial and harmful aspects. Microorganisms and the environment. Biological nitrogen fixers have the ability to convert atmospheric nitrogen into a form that plants can use.
That's amazing. So, they help make the soil more fertile for plants to grow.
Exactly. And you know, microorganisms can also help clean up the environment by decomposing organic waste.
How does that work?
When plant and animal waste, like decaying leaves and dead animals, are left on the ground, microorganisms break them down and convert them into simpler substances.
So, the microbes are turning the waste into something useful for the environment?
Yes, that's right. The nutrients released during the decomposition process can then be used by other plants and animals, completing the cycle. Harmful microorganisms. Some microorganisms can cause diseases in humans, animals, and plants. These disease-causing microorganisms are called pathogens.
Wow, that's interesting. How do they cause diseases?
Pathogens can enter our bodies through the air we breathe, the water we drink, or the food we eat. They can also be transmitted through direct contact with an infected person or animal.
I see. Can you give me some examples of diseases caused by microorganisms?
Sure, some examples include cholera, common cold, chickenpox, and tuberculosis. These are called communicable diseases because they can spread from an infected person to a healthy person.
That's really important to know. Are there other ways microorganisms can be harmful?
Yes, microorganisms can also spoil food, clothing, and leather. And some insects and animals can act as carriers of disease-causing microbes, like the housefly and the Anopheles mosquito. Food preservation. One common method of food preservation is using chemicals like salt, sugar, and preservatives. These help inhibit the growth of microorganisms that can cause food to spoil.
That's interesting. I've heard of using salt and sugar to preserve food, but I didn't know about preservatives.
Yes, Preservatives like sodium benzoate and sodium metabisulfite are often used in jams, pickles, and other processed foods to prevent spoilage.
Wow, I didn't know that. What about other methods of food preservation?
Another common method is using heat and cold treatments. Boiling milk, for example, and refrigeration slows down the growth of microbes.
I see. And what about pasteurization? I've heard that term before.
Yes. Pasteurization is a process where milk is heated to around 70 degrees Celsius for 15 to 30 seconds and then quickly chilled. This kills harmful microbes without affecting the taste or nutritional value. Nitrogen fixation and nitrogen cycle. The atmosphere has 78% nitrogen gas, but plants and animals can't use it directly. Certain bacteria and blue-green algae in the soil fix nitrogen from the atmosphere and convert it into usable compounds.
Wow, that's really interesting. So how do the plants and animals get the nitrogen they need?
Plants can absorb the nitrogen compounds from the soil through their root system and use them to synthesize proteins and other important compounds. Animals then get these nitrogen-containing compounds by feeding on the plants.
I see. And what happens to the nitrogen when plants and animals die?
When they die, bacteria and fungi in the soil break down the nitrogenous waste and convert it back into nitrogen compounds that can be used by plants again. Some of it is also converted back into nitrogen gas that goes into the atmosphere.
That's amazing. So the nitrogen just keeps cycling between the atmosphere, soil, plants, and animals.
Exactly. That's why the percentage of nitrogen in the atmosphere remains more or less constant, despite being used by living things.